Hey guys, welcome to Indie Game Hustle. My name is Charles, and in this video, we're going to take a quick look at changing and turning, some of these hierarchy items into some prefabs before we start looking at the menu. And my guess is after I do a basic menu I want to return back to making some additional things for our player to do in our world before we actually jump into kind of doing like a block out of the first, a first level of what we're gonna do. So what I want to do here is go into my folder. So I'm going to go into Project Robot Boy and then go into the prefabs here. And then here, so far we have a characters folder. So what I want to do is right click. I'm going to go create folder and I'm just going to call it like game manager. Just like that. So game manager. All right. And then I'm going to double click that. And what I'm going to do is take this game manager and I'm going to put that inside here, which in turn turns it into a prefab. So we'll do that. So before I do that, let's make sure that any objects that need to be in the game manager are already in there before I do it. It's not that you can't add it later, but I'm just going to do it this way. So let's just take a look. So we have our enemy. So basically these things up here, these are just things in our scene that will not be kept, so that's fine. We're just going to look at game manager, and then so we have our trigger change, so that's not going to go in the game manager. That's something that will maybe have its own prefab created. We have our player spawn, that's not going to be in there either. We have our checkpoint, that's not going to be there. Trigger current scene, so that's probably going to be something that's in our game manager because we want every scene to have that. So what I'm going to do is click and drag this into the game manager folder there, and so get current scene. Then I'm going to move it up in the hierarchy here so it can be seen there. All right, cool. All right, so next, and what else is in here? We have our checkpoint, we have live capsules, and I think that's pretty much it for now. We'll be adding more additional things, I'm sure, to it as we go. But for now, I think that we'll call it for the game manager. So what I will do here is go to game manager and I'm going to click it and drag it and pull it into here. So now it's blue. So that means it's a prefab. Okay. And I'll go into more details to explain what prefabs are, but it just gives us the ability to basically anything that we do to this prefab, just like our player. So if I was to click this arrow, now we're in this hierarchy of the prefab. So even if we made some changes to this, it'll be the same changes throughout every scene. So that's really great. So it just makes it easy to be able to make changes to one object, and that object applies to wherever this prefab has been placed, right? All right, so another thing we want to do is make some more prefabs. So we have characters, we have a game manager folder, and what I want to do now is create another folder, and I don't know what I'll name it. Maybe we'll name it maybe like objects or scene objects or something like objects. And we'll just call them objects for now. And in this objects folder, this is where I can put, say, the health count capsule. So for instance, we have this health capsule. I'm going to delete these other two, and I'll leave that one there. So I'm going to click and drag this here like so. And so now that's blue. So now what I can do is take this health capsule and just put it in the scene. And so now we have as many as we need without having to remake anything really, right? And so if we need to make any changes to this capsule at all, we can make the changes to this one and it'll apply to the rest. So what if we don't want that particular health count capsule to be worth 50? Maybe we want it to be worth, I don't know, like 20 instead, or even less, 10. So we'll go back, make that change, and now all of those health capsules are going to have the same information. As you can see, I'm going to go into this and it's going to say 10, and if I click on any one of these and look at its actions, 10. All right, great. All right, so what I'm gonna do is I'll just go ahead and just move these down here. And then I'll go ahead and hit play just so we can see that at work. All right, so now we have those health capsules, and I will go ahead and get injured. And before, I think they were taking off 50, right? So now we're gonna definitely need more capsules to make that up. So if I click this, you see now it's not much, but as you can see, now we got that health. And then this one over here, oh, I deleted them, right? Yeah, exactly. So those particular health capsules are now all the same, and that's great. And so if we wanted different health capsules, we can create, we can either change them individually and not update. So for instance, if I want to change health capsule 3 to be a different value, I could do that. So if I select actions and I just say, you know what, I'm gonna make this one 50. Now, do you see the little blue line that kind of showed up right here? So that's basically saying that there was a change on this one, but the rest of them are not. If I select the parent of this and I go to where it says overrides, it's basically letting me know that there was a change here, and I can apply that change to all of them if I want them all to be that 50. But in this case, I don't, so I don't want to make that change. And that's really the simple way of looking at health at capsules. Now, there's another area that we can look into. You can do prefabs. There's a lot more to prefabs than this, but on a very basic level, this is generally how they work. But as we need more of those complex explanations, we'll go into it. So for this one, I'm just going to delete it. And then what I'll do is just move this here like that. And just leave that there. So now we have 3 health capsules in this section here. So that works out pretty good. All right, so now that we have the health capsule inside the objects here, we can add some more stuff. So we have a life one, right? So all I got to do is actually click and drag this into the objects. And so now we have the life capsule. And so if we had multiple lives, we can do the same thing here. All right, but I'll delete those because we don't need multiple lives there. Now, also, if I double click this life capsule and I go inside the conditions, remember that value, it says compared to value 3, and we just set this to be 3. I was thinking, obviously, I don't think we want his max value for his lives to get to be 3. Maybe his max value can be 7. So what I'll do, and just thinking it through, I'm going to go to preferences, right? And I'm going to, let's see here, I'm going to create a variable, and I'm going to call it player lives max, right? And so now that I have that maxed, I'm going to go ahead and turn this into a number. And I'm going to set it at 7. So let's just assume that that's the number that we want the lives to not to go above. So instead of us going in here and changing this value, we can just change the actual variable. So here, what I'll do is I'll move this out the way. And so now remember, we're inside the life capsule. So now what we want to do is change this compare to a global variable. And that global variable is going to be the player lives. So that's something we can do. So now when we start the game, let's go ahead and hit play. All right, great. So remember, our life is currently at 3. And before, when we ran into it, it used to say down here in the left corner at max. But if I select it now, it changes to 4. And that's because now we changed it to 7, right? So if I was a patient man here, and I'm going to get killed 3 more times, because that's what I'm going to do just to prove the point. So now he's died. Oh, of course, we're going to go 3. And it's going to say remaining lives 3. And of course, we're going to go to here and we get 4. That's great. So what I'm going to do now is just go ahead and take this live capsule, put it out here a few more times. Put one here and drop it over here. I think that's well over the number that we need to do this. And hit play. All right, cool. So I'm gonna go 3, 4, 5, 5. Oh, they're in the ground. I'll put them too low. 5, 6, of course 7, right there. And if I try to get this one, it won't because it says lives at max. So great. So that's great. We won't be able to get that one, and that's how I want that to work, at least for now anyway. So we at least can minimize that. And so as we get hit, of course, and we can get more life just like that. Cool. All right, so that's creating that prefab there. And of course, like I said, we can always change that live max value to something even higher. But for now, let's just leave it at something like 7. So, all right, cool. So we have that going on. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and delete these life capsules. And I will go ahead and delete this one here. So I'll get rid of this health capsule. And I want to kind of keep these together as I change them to prefabs. All right, and so that's fine. So I'll leave game manager there. All right, great. So the next thing we have is this checkpoint. And so now we have this checkpoint. All right, so looking at the checkpoint, what do we have in here? So we have the checkpoint. That's the game object. We have the sphere, and we have the trigger. All right, so the checkpoint is going to be this game object there. We have the sphere, and then we have the trigger. So, so what we're looking at is on player enter, we have an action. And basically this action is saying for this particular checkpoint, this is going to be 1. Okay, so there should be no other checkpoint in this scene that has that number. Okay, and so that's what we want to do. So we want to make sure that that's always the case. So for instance, if I select this checkpoint, and I'm going to just, before I turn it into a prefab, what I want to do is do a Control D, and I'm going to move this checkpoint over, say, over here, like somewhere over here. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and change this checkpoint to another number here. So I'm going to actions, and I'm going to call this checkpoint 2. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play. All right, and so now we have our scene. So if we look at our variables here and minimize these, and I look for checkpoint. So currently we're at 0 because that is the spot that we're spawned at, right? So if I were to go over to checkpoint 2, right, and that one changes orange, we have the number here changes to 2. So that's good. All right, so I want to kill the guy. So I'm going to go ahead and kill him. All right. Hopefully without getting any health. All right. So I died there. All right. Cool. So our remaining lives went down to 3. Checkpoint 2 still. And let's see what happened. So it looks like we have an error here. So let's check to see what's going on. All right. So it says we have an error here, and we need to verify as to why. So let's see if we have any errors. And here it says change attribute code. So let's check to see that checkpoint that we created. So again, we have the checkpoint here. We have a sphere, and we have a trigger, and this trigger is on player enter. And then we have the actions here. All right, and we have a change material and spawn point. All right, so we just need to verify to see why we're getting an error message when going to this particular one. So I'm going to hit play again. All right, and then again, I'm going to go now over to our other checkpoint and see if the error message is generating that way. So we have our spawn point. And this is troubleshooting because this is going to be good to learn as well. Everything doesn't always go as planned, right? So we're going to go ahead and get killed without falling off the map. Player died. Our spawn point is 1. Our remaining is 2, which is good. And then that's working. So now we need to check to see what's going on. All right, so what I'm going to do is go over to this spawn point now and see. All right, so now we're over here. And that's great. Now, I think I know why, is because this particular area, if you notice, the camera is changing, and I have a feeling it doesn't know which camera to go to if a checkpoint is in this area. So I'll die just to confirm that. So I'm going to get hit, and what I'll do is I'll go get hit for this guy here. All right. And I have a feeling that it's a camera thing. So let's go ahead and do that. So player died. And we know the checkpoint number, so we know it should work. And our remaining lives is 1. And so after that loads, exactly. All right, so that's fine. So let's now take a look at if we take this checkpoint and move it somewhere else. If, for instance, we move this checkpoint to say, let's just put it here. If we put it here and we don't get that same error, and then that means that it's just a camera thing, and we just have to address that. So I'll go ahead and hit play again, and we'll check it out. All right. All right, so I'll go ahead and get killed. Actually, I'll go get checkpoint first. All right, so we hit the checkpoint. Great. And oh, switched on us. All right. One more. Great. So player died. Great. So now, hopefully, we get sent over to this section. And if not, we'll figure out why. All right. So that's not working. All right. That's okay. All right. So let's see why. All right, so what we need to do is check on the part where our manager is coming into the scene. So it's checking the current scene. We're checking if the player died. We have the conditions there. So let me move this out the way. If the player dies, we wait 2 seconds, changing those things. That's fine. And let's look at our original checkpoint to see if there's anything completely different with it. So I will look at, let's see here, our canvas, get our current scene. That should be working. And then I will take a look at the checkpoint. Wrong one. Where's the other one? Where is the other? There it is. All right, so I'm going to just, again, look at this one. Oh, I think I know what the issue is. There is a point in where the marker is, right? So we have the marker, and there's a marker here. Is there 2 markers? No. So we have the trigger spawn. Oh, I see, right. So we have a checkpoint, but not a spawn point, right? So let's look at that, right? So that's the part we forgot. So in terms of the checkpoint was only registering the spawn point number. The spawn point, however, didn't know where to put you. So what we need to do is look at our spawn point, and I'm just going to do a copy paste. And here's a spawn point. And so what I'm going to do is look at its conditions on start. This spawn point is going to compare. So it's going to say, hey, if this value is equal to whatever, then instantiate the player at this location, right? So that's what we need to do. So we were missing the spawn point. All right, so there you have it. So what we need to do is I'm going to delete this here. And what I'm going to do now is delete this spawn point. And the reason I'm going to do that is because I think what I may want to do is combine the spawn point and the checkpoints at the same place. So for instance, we have a spawn 0, which I'll leave that one for now. But then we have spawn 1, this here. And what I want to do is put this inside of the checkpoint. So what I'm going to do is take this, and I'm just going to name it 1 for now. I'm going to put 1 on it. And I'm going to take this player spawn. And I think, do I really want to do that? Do I want to combine them? Or do I just want to have them completely separate? And I can argue for both ways. I think for now, I want to have them separate. Let's see how let's see that workflow work out. So we have that and that. All right, so let's go ahead and create this prefab. So I'm going to take this spawn point and see if this works out. I'm going to change the spawn point and I'm going to turn it into a prefab. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is take this player spawn, this one, and I'm going to change it to a prefab as well. So I'm going to move it in here. All right, so now we have this and that. All right, cool. So now the idea is wherever we have a checkpoint, we need to have a player spawn, okay? So I'm gonna first take a checkpoint and put it here. All right, and we'll move that in that same area because now it may not be the issue with a camera change. And then what I'm gonna do is take a player spawn. First, actually, before I do that, let's go ahead and change the actual checkpoint to a number. So when he comes here, we're going to say this is 2. And then the player spawn, I'm going to put it over here. And this one needs to match the one it's next to. So what I'm going to do is minimize that. And then what I'll do is I'll say, hey, on this condition, if this is 2, then they should put him at this point, at this location. All right, cool. So hopefully that works. I think that's a good fix. So let's take a look. Let me minimize all this stuff. All right, hopefully that fixes that. I'm gonna hit play and let's see if that works. All right, great. So everything is as it should be. All right, so we have our spawn point 0 because that's where we're at right now. I'm going to go over here and it's going to change it to 2. So that's great. And our camera changes, which is fine. And so now we're going to die and go over here and get killed by this little guy. Actually, this one would be quicker. And one more hit. Ah, I missed this. Cool. Player died. So next, it should take us to here, remaining 2. That's working great. And there we go. Perfect. So now we're working at this spawn point. All right, great. So that's how we're going to have to do our workflow. I think that will be a pretty good way to go about it. And so let's hit play and take a look at our scene. All right, great. All right, so that's good. And so with that said, we have this checkpoint and we have this checkpoint. This checkpoint is not a prefab. Oh, it is. We already turned it into a prefab. And then the player spawn point that's with it is also a prefab. Now, you would think we might as well go ahead and combine them. And I'm tempted to do that. However, I'm not sure yet, so we'll consider it later. But for now, let's leave that the way that is for now. All right. So basically, whenever you use a checkpoint, you want to make sure that checkpoint has a player spawn to go alongside it, so you can put the player at that location. All right, cool. All right, so that works out pretty good. So we're gonna leave this one here. We could just delete this. Actually, there's nothing wrong with that. We could delete this and So if I deleted player spawn 0, right, and I take this player spawn out and I just want him to show up at this location, what number do you think we need to set this one to in order for when the scene starts? Because what's going to happen is this scene currently is working in terms of the way when we're as the maker of the game, it's 0 right now. Now, if we want to start at a different point, like 1, we could do that. But for now, I want to start at 0. So if I were to hit play, it's not going to go anywhere. It's going to have the same issue we had before because there is no 0 in the scene currently. I don't think so, unless the default is 0. Nope. All right, so now what we're going to do is just simply change this one to 0. That's it. So I'll just go in here and I'll say condition, change this value to 0. And so if we hit play, it's going to check that spawn point and we'll be right where we should be. Unfortunately, it is too low, probably in the ground. And to confirm that, as you can see, it spawned underneath the ground. So hit play again just to make sure that that is the case. And there we go. Cool. So now we're good to go. And just like we expected it to work. So that works pretty good. All right. So looking back at our hierarchy here. So we have our player spawn point working. We have them turned into prefabs, which is great. We have a scene camera change over here we can turn into a prefab, right? And right now it's a cube. A sphere. We can always change that to a cube if you want. But I think what we can do is first I'll just go ahead and get rid of this one here. And so this change camera on player enter and then on player exit. So for instance, what I'll do is go ahead and move this trigger in here, right? Objects, prefab objects. So it's a camera change. So as you can see, this camera change here has it doing a certain set of actions, right? So this action on action 4. So what I'll do is rename it, okay? And so just to show you the power of the prefab, I'm going to double click on the main one. So I'm going to actually copy, paste this prefab, and I'm going to move it, say right here, okay? And so what I'll do is, we know those are two different objects. I'm going to double click on the prefab inside the project folder. And so now we're here. What I want to do is change these names. So this action here is going to be for entering. So 4 is for entering, 5 is for exit. Let's go ahead and actually do that. So I'm going to actually name this actions enter area. And then this is going to be actions exit area. All right, cool. So when I do that, we're going to go look at those particular camera changes. So if we open it up, as you can see, it made the change to this one, and it's also going to change this one as well. So that's great. And so we don't have to worry about that. Now, there is one thing I want to look at. So for instance, this particular camera change here, if I were to hit play, because we're going to show up right inside this one when the game starts. Okay. So as you can see, the camera is going to be there. And so when I exit it, it's going to go back to that. And if I go back to this one, it goes to that. Okay, great. And so that's what we want. So say we want this area to be kind of like this, and that's great. And then if we move out of it, it kind of does that. And that's a nice smooth transition. And so we can do this throughout the whole game as we enter different areas. And what's even better is that we can go into this actions enter area and actually make changes. So we can create new camera motors and all types of things for this. So for instance, the camera motor that is assigned to this one is of course inside of itself. So if we select this camera motor, we can change this particular one. So maybe we want the offset to be higher on this one to 12. And maybe do this. I don't know what this is because we would have to actually check that, but I'll hit play. And you can see the power of being able to have different types of camera motors and camera changes based on the areas that you're in. So for instance, in here, we have created some type of overhead view, and that's pretty nice, right? So the minute that I leave this view, it's going to transition to that. And if I go over here, we activated that. And so if we leave it, we're going to go back to that normal camera view. But if we have a special location that we need to see, this works out pretty great. And so as we come over here, we can still do our attacks and we can still do everything we need. So it's starting to get more complex. And I wouldn't even say more complex, but just it's making things feel alive and unique, like things are really changing. You're making some significant changes to your level and whatnot. So it looks pretty good as we do that. All right, great. All right, so I'm going to hit play, get out of this one. And so now we have that camera change. So now just keep in mind, though, that camera over here is different than this one. What we don't want to do, because we're using the same prefab, what we don't want to do is click on override and click apply all. In this situation, we don't want to do that because if we did that, this change that we made to this particular camera is going to apply to every camera in the game that we set up. So just be mindful of those sorts of things. I'm sure there's other and better ways to work with prefabs. And I think there definitely are other ways. There's called variants that we have to look into, but I don't use those that much, but I definitely think this may be an instance where we might want to utilize it. So, but for now, let's just keep in mind that if this is the last change that we're making to this particular prefab, just make sure that we don't override this particular change in here. So cool. So we'll leave that alone. And I'll actually delete this particular one because we don't need that one there. Okay. All right. So far we've made some good progress. We have our checkpoint, health capsule, life capsule, change camera, player spawn. All right. So the next few things we might want to do is maybe do an enemy. We can do enemies. Now, for now, let's see what happens if we have two dims in our scene without creating a prefab. So what I'll do is go ahead and do this because I haven't actually looked at this, and we're going to go ahead and experience this right now together. Video may be a little longer than normal, but this is the video that I want to make before we get into doing menus. So I just want to make sure that we kind of touch on a bunch of things. So of course they're doing the same thing over and over again, identical, and that's okay. What I want to do is kill one, and I want to see if the other one's dead too. Nope, good. And I just want to make sure that they weren't sharing like the same stats. And of course they shouldn't be because the component is added to that particular enemy. Okay. Great. And so that's great. So now we can have multiple enemies in the scene. And that works out pretty good. All right, great. All right, so now we have that set up. Let's go ahead and hit play. And what I'm going to do is simply, of course, move the character enemy dim into the prefab section. Actually, no, I won't do that, will I? Because what I'm thinking is, in terms of characters, maybe it would be better to put them where they're supposed to be. So in terms of enemies, I want to put the minions dim, and I want to put him here. So what I'll do is I'll grab the dim and put his prefab here. Okay. And we're eventually going to need to organize this. And then the same thing for the spider. I'll do that here as well. So I will do the spider and put him there. All right, great. And we have a spider weapon that we're using. And it's been a while. I probably can't even remember. But once we start addressing like polish and those types of things, and we just start talking about other topics, we'll investigate that. All right, so we created that particular prefab. So now the question is, will it work if we just got rid of these guys here in the scene, or if we just added more. So this one over here, I want to delete this one. And what I'm going to do is go into my enemies. And the way you want to think about it is, hey, you're building out this level, and maybe you want to add some additional enemies to this scene. So I'm just going to go into my dim and find him, which is here, and I'm just going to drag him here, and I want to drag him here, and they're all going to move because they have all the same type of behaviors, and those are the types of things we'll change eventually, but for now, we'll do that. Cool. All right, so we got 5 different enemies here, and just to throw in a spider, I'm going to drop the spider like over here somewhere, like over here somewhere. Cool. Now, I don't think they're returning. I think I turned that off. I can't remember if they're returning to any particular location. I think they just keep straight, so that's fine for now. So we'll talk about behaviors and AI and stuff later. All right, great. So we have a spider over here, so that's kind of cool. And we have all these spiders, or these little guys over here. And great. And we're gonna just kill that guy. Kill that one. I think the other one fell off. Cool. We get rid of all those guys, and that's good. We have the spider over here I want to kill. Where is he? Did he come all the way over here? Oh, yeah. Good. Awesome. All right, great. And so we were able to create prefabs for the enemy and actually put them in the scene, and that works out pretty good. Now, what we probably want to do is create a situation where our player will die by maybe falling out the level, maybe, or falling off of something. So for instance, if he jumps off this edge, because right now I can't kill him without being killed by an enemy. So we may want to create something that simply kills the player when he falls off this here. All right, so he'll just fall forever, and we don't want that because that's a bad experience for the player of the game, and then they'll say it's broken, and we don't want to do that. So long story short, we have a bunch of enemies here, and I'll just go ahead and delete most of these because we don't need them anymore. And what I want to do now is create an object. So what I'll do is go to game object. And in this case, I'm just going to use a 3D object. And let's see here. I'll do a cube. Not a cube. Maybe I'll go to use Pro Builder for this one or not. I don't know. Let's see. I'll use Pro Builder for this one. And it's pretty cool because you can use Pro Builder and UModeler at the same time based on the needs. All right, cool. So what I'm going to do is quickly just go ahead and create a new shape. And what I'll do is, and I'll go here and take this out. And I'll make it as large as I guess I need to. So I'm just going to do this. And I'll probably do the same thing with UModeler, just in case people are using one or the other. You can do the same thing with both. And just keep in mind, I probably won't continue to switch between them. But for now, I'm just trying to confirm, like making sure everybody at least can get some of these basic things done. And so here we go. So I'm going to go ahead and create this here. And what I'm basically making is I don't know what they call them, but just something like when the player falls and touches it, he dies. Like that's it. And so that's going to be that. So it's not going to stay like that. So what we're going to do is select this object, and inside of Pro Builder, you can set trigger so that it's this color. And then if you want what we're going to do is on this cube, we're going to create a trigger. Okay. And so I'm going to go to game creator, trigger, and then on this trigger, and I'm actually thinking, no, what I'm going to do is delete that. I'm going to go GameCube. I'm going to cube. I'm going to go to the actually add component. I'm going to add a trigger to the component. And then what I'm going to do is when the player touches this, I want his health to decrease. So I want the object, if the player enters this, I want something to happen. So I want to go to actions, and I just want to change the stats attribute, the player stats attribute to, let's subtract it by 99, like something crazy like that. So we want to subtract it to that. I don't want to set it. I want to subtract it. We could do a set. We can set it to 0. That could work too. But let's just see how this works. So basically the idea is when you touch this, it triggers, and then it plays this action. And then remember, we have a death mechanic that should also take effect, right? All right. So the reason I put it on the cube is because it'll use the cube's trigger as opposed to the triggers collider trigger. So anyway, let's see if this works. So I'm gonna hit play. All right, cool. So let's just go ahead and jump off and see what happens. So we should jump down. Player died. Health went all the way down. And after a few seconds, remaining lives. Cool, right? So that's pretty sweet. It's just logic, right, guys? At the end of the day. And so we get our player health back when we start the scene. And so now we're kind of doing what we need to do. And so if we kill these guys and definitely want to fix this guy's doggone box. He's going to kill me. Let me go get some health. We're turning into a game, aren't we? All right, so let's go ahead and get some health before he kills me because I created such a terrible... Is that the only health I have? Oh, it is. Oh, got to make these attacks count. All right, so go ahead and kill him. All right, cool. Cool, he's dead. All right, cool. So he's dead, but I still want to kill myself. So I'm going to jump like somewhere over here because like I was fooling around and then I fell. Boom, player died. And of course we can change timing and stuff later, but cool. Remaining lives 2, great. And so now the scene starts again. All right, great. All right, so that's working out pretty good. And so let's go ahead and go back to our scene. So now what we want to do is do the same thing with uModeler as well. This isn't a versus video, but this is just to say that, hey, if you're using ProBuilder, you can use this. And so now what I'm going to do is the same thing with uModeler. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that off. And I'm going to go ahead and do some other things. So what I'm going to do is create a cube, and I'll just go ahead and do this. And it's pretty much the same process, right? So we go here and I'll create something like that. Oops. And go here. Bring it down. Pretty cool. So you got that there. All right. And then so what we want to do is, I believe it is in the local settings. Yeah, I think it is in here. So let me remove this window. So I want to put it like here. And I'm gonna click this. And invisible in play mode is over here. So if you do that, it changes it to a different material, right? And so it's invisible in play mode. That's great. All right, and so what I can do is make it, I guess we can do convex and make it a trigger. Okay, and so we would just do the same thing with this. We would just basically say on this object here, I'm going to add a trigger. And then when the player is basically touching this, we can do on player enter, do some actions, and we're simply going to reduce the stats. And we're just going to go health. We're going to go, what was it? Subtract or something like that. Crazy, right? Subtract that much and he should die. I think for this one, what do we do? Subtract as well. Yep. And so we should get the same result as that one. And let's go ahead and hit play and see. All right, cool. And as you can see, you can't see it because in play mode, it is completely invisible. And so I'm just going to jump off. Player died, just like so. And takes us here. Perfect. So, of course, you can use either one you want. Just keep in mind, once I actually start building out levels, I'll be using UModeler. I think with Pro Builder, I'm using both of them mainly because with Pro Builder, I believe Polybrush works pretty good with. So there may be some areas of the game where I want to use Polybrush to kind of mock out some areas that would be kind of like grass or whatever. I don't know. So we'll get into that. But yeah. All right, cool. So that works out pretty good. So all you got to do at this point for this type of object is you can take this, and I'll just go ahead for this case. I'll just delete this one. And I'll use the Pro Builder one, and I'll go ahead and do that. And so for this one, what I'll do is go ahead and turn this into a prefab as well. So what I will do this is I'll call it a death cube because that sounds terrible. I don't know. And then I'm going to go into my prefabs objects, and I'm going to put the death cube, death fall. I don't know, fall to death. I don't know, something like that. Death fall cube. I don't know, something like that. And basically, I'll just put that in here, right? And so now we have that prefab working great. So what's great about this is we can have certain areas like that. So if I take this death fall cube out here and I want to change the size of it, we can do that. And it only applies to that particular one, not both. Okay. Now, again, like I said, you don't want to override the original. You just want to make some basic changes and do it like that. So again, if we didn't need so much and we only wanted a death cube to be for certain things, or if we wanted to use it for whatever he touches, you can use that for that. Cool. All right, so that's our death cube prefab. All righty. All right, we're getting somewhere. All right. Cool. So what else do we have left to do? All right, so we have these markers here. We're not going to do anything with those. Markers are just used as is, so we're not going to mess with that. We have those. We're not going to do that. We have a camera motor. We could use the camera motor, this camera motor, and the main camera. All right, it's a good question. So while we haven't determined for the actual game what the camera view would look like, but this is the main camera for this scene, and this is the main camera motor that's associated with it. So it may be in our best interest to go ahead and turn these into a prefab as well. So for instance, if I were to take this camera out and put it here and take this camera motor, and actually before I take it out, I'm just going to call it main camera motor. And then I take it out and put it here, it's going to be a prefab, right? So what I want to do is hit play and just double check that it's still working. All right, great. So our camera is still working, and if as we switch to certain areas, the camera does what it's supposed to do. Great. All right. So now what I'm going to do is delete this camera motor and this camera. And we're going to take a chance here. Hit delete. Now, obviously, I'm going to hit play, and it should not work. We should have basically a black scene. You shouldn't see anything, I don't think. And just to confirm, we're going to see that now here. Right. There's no cameras in the scene, right? Everything else is showing up. That's great. But there's no cameras, and you don't hear anything because I think the cameras are also listening in for the audio, right? So now the goal here is, as you can see, there's no camera found, and that's good for now. So if this was a new scene that we were creating, we would just want to go here and take this camera motor, put it in the scene, take our main camera, put it in the scene, and we would believe that this should work properly because we just added those. So let's go ahead and see that. So I hit play. All right. And so it looks like it didn't take, and that's okay. We just need to check on that and see what's going on. So our main camera we put in this scene. Now, the reason why is because it doesn't have the camera motor, right? It doesn't know that that's the camera motor. So what we're going to do is have to take this camera motor and put it there. And so now when I click play, it should work properly. So these are things maybe I need to think about when we add a camera motor and everything to the scene. We just got to make sure that the camera motor is added to the main camera. All right, and let's see if it works. Good. So it works as it should. All right, great. And just to make sure everything else is still working. Perfect. All right. All right. So far, so good. So we have our main camera motor turned into that. We're not going to mess with this event system thing. That has more to do with like your controls and whatnot. And that might be high level stuff. I'm not going to touch on this stuff just yet. We have our enemy boss. Again, I'm not going to mess with him too much. But I will, let's see, do I have a character for him? Enemies, boss. I will turn him into a prefab. He will also become a prefab as well. So I will move him in there as well. All right, cool. So just go ahead and do that. All right, these markers we're not going to mess with. This, leave that alone. This random cube, global volumes. We're good on that. And directional lights, that type of stuff. So we'll leave that stuff alone. We can turn those things into prefabs later as well if we want. But for now, I wanted to focus mainly on just some of the game objects that we will need for mechanic-wise, making sure those things work. All right, well, that works out pretty good. So if we were to go in our objects, we should be able to get some health in here. So go ahead and do that. We put some health in here. We can just actually copy and paste it just like that. Our little prefab health icons here. That's great. If we wanted to put more enemies, we should be able to just go into the game, go into our enemies and go into our minions, dig through all of the folders that we have and put these little guys wherever they need to be. Of course, they're not that smart right now, but that's okay. Now, of course, all these capsules I just put in here are like hovering. Like I would have to select them and bring them up some, right, to make them like that. And of course, I want those things to like float up and down and spin and actually not look like this. But for now, they're okay. All right, cool. So we have that, and we can just kind of build up on this type of stuff. And we're going to be creating all types of prefabs for all types of different things. But this is just kind of getting us ready to start thinking about how they could work in our scenes. Okay. All right. I think that's it. I think the next thing I want to start doing now is prepare us connecting a main menu with a scene. And the reason why we went ahead and created all these prefabs because we can get kind of like a base scene. No, this is a base scene, but we want to kind of get that going there. Cool. And we can probably increase so they don't have to touch it exactly. but it's up to you. All right, cool. I think we're going to call that it for this video. So for the next one, we definitely should be touching on the menus, and it's going to be super basic. We're talking like start new game, load game, maybe like a settings screen, but basically really simple. I'm gonna probably just have to think about it, and then we'll address it. Cool. Well, I hope this was useful to you guys. I know this was filled with a bunch of different things, but I'm sure we can use those in whatever projects that you're working on. All right, well, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. To stay up to date on the latest 3D platforming tutorial, feel free to subscribe to the channel. If you'd like to support, you can find me on Patreon, or of course you can hit me up on Discord. I like to talk about whatever project you guys are working on. Of course, thanks for hanging with me. Your support is always appreciated. As always, remember, never give up and keep moving forward. Peace.